By being honest with yourself. You gotta really go into a place where you start really like pushing yourself emotionally to understand where you're tricking yourself. Where are you tricking yourself? The amount of times I see kids like yourselves roll up on me and say, Gary, I'm gonna buy the Chicago Bulls. You're gonna buy the Jets, I'm gonna buy the Bulls. And I could taste it in their sentence that they know they can't. The place where it really works is when you stop peacocking and posturing to yourself as a measure to make yourself feel better and bigger, and actually are just comfortable with what you are, you get really into your state. This was what's so great about my life. You're a failure, you're gonna be a garbage man. And I was just like, I just like selling stuff, you know? And I don't care that everybody thinks that I'm not a lawyer or a doctor or an executive. Like, I'm happy. And if that makes, you know, I was a pig in shit at 27 making $70,000 a year. Pumped. Working every day at a liquor store, helping my family. Like, flow's easy once you stop lying to yourself and once you stop trying to impress others with the shit that comes out of your mouth.
Love that.
Right, and then back to your point, I've seen a lot of people that use flow to get there, but then they're in new places and then they stop. They were confident enough to get here, but now that they're in like this upper middle class of society, that's when they start posturing, because they're like, they thought they were good, but this person they just met has a yacht. And they're like, yo, they feel lesser than, and they can't keep their flow because they stopped doing the thing that got them there. The thing that got them there was not giving a fuck, but now that they got this new place, like something changed, because they didn't even realize shit got that crazy up here, and they actually do feel insecure.
Yeah, awesome. Nate.
Hey Gary, I'm Nate. I'm really curious about the value of new experiences and trying new things. What's something new that you could try in your career that you hadn't done before and ended up having an impact on your trajectory that you were expecting?
I started to deploy candor one-on-one, not just in settings like this. Candor was very hard for me, team. I really struggled with confrontation and being the deliverer of bad news. And so it completely changed the trajectory of my career. I started realizing everything that wasn't working for me professionally and personally was based on my ability to be candorous. And so about 3-4 years ago, I started getting better at it. I still struggle with it. I'm still maybe a D+, C-, C. I'm on the way, but I was in F land. And from F to C has like fucking been remarkable. And the impact is I'm well on my way for the personal and professional, you know, accomplishments that I want for myself. And so I've gone, in the macro, what it's meant is I've gone from A to A+. Because that's where I was getting fucked up. Everything was so good anyway, kind of, sorta, that it was like hidden, that this was like, when you're living an A life, and I am, it was hard to see that there was something to get to A+, and I had to go through some painful things professionally and personally to get there. I think I balance it all by not judging myself too harshly. I think that's really where it starts and stops. I think way too many people have lost the work-life balance before it even started, because they're gonna be critical on themselves regardless of it, right? It's so hard to balance. And so for me, I just know I'm doing the best that I can. And if I'm doing the best that I can, that in itself has put me in a position to succeed. And some days that means that I have to choose my family time on a Friday night, or Sunday morning, an executive ran into me on Saturday and asked me to meet for coffee and wanted to jam, and I just couldn't. You know, I couldn't because of the family time, right? And so that's the family being chosen. Other times I'm, you know, flying and speaking somewhere or meeting, having a big meeting, and I'm missing, you know, some sort of like school function that I don't want to miss. And that's the other way. And the truth is, I just don't beat myself up. All of us are trying the best we can. And so as long as that, you know, nothing is glaring, and to me glaring is the following. My kids have become completely horrible people and have major problems in society, and or I go directly out of business in my businesses, as long as neither one of those are happening, I think it's gonna be okay. And so I think it's how you judge how you're balancing way more than the reality of it. And recognizing that you have a different point of view on it than your partner, than the kids, than your business associates. And I think you need to care about your point of view on it first and foremost, while being empathetic to everybody else's points of view.
Awesome. That's a really good answer. I know that, yeah, it's hard to try and not judge what you're doing and stuff like that.
That's the game, right? That's like everybody could be failing at work-life balance if they've decided they're failing at work-life balance.
Okay.
So as long as you're not, as long as your spouse or your partner isn't saying I want to break up or get a divorce, and as long as your kids aren't like eating pine tar, and as long as your banks aren't coming to foreclose your business, you're gonna be okay. And I think people are freaking out. Like, I didn't even see my dad until I was 15, and I love him and we have the best relationship. Like, there are people who've had their fathers walk out on their family and they didn't see him for 15 years, and now they have great relationships because they've reconciled. Like, people are way too judgmental and overanalyzing work-life balance in today's modern PR society. And so if you feel good about it, then you'll win. And I think not judging yourself too harshly, because it is hard to balance everything, because that's life. And I don't aim for perfect. I'm not interested in perfect. It's not real. Perfect is fake. And so I just live.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. It feels better, right? It feels better to look at it that way.
Yeah, I said it's hard, and I said with little kids and stuff, it's like mommy's not here, daddy's not here, and that's kind of all they see. As much as they're involved, it's just kind of hard some days. And
they're tougher than you think. How old are they?
3 and 8.
3 and 8. Tell me anything you remember of being 3. Go.
Not much.
Interesting.
Just being in a hospital. That's
right.
about it.
And you know what? When you really as long as you're counterbalancing it with love, and one of the biggest things, all these parents judging people. Meanwhile, they're around because they work 9 to 5. But if they're not deploying love and are in it from 5 to 9 every night and on the weekend, what are they really accomplishing? Just because you're there doesn't mean you're there.
Right. So you do have your family, like you said, when you have your family time, you just kind of say, that's family time, and that's kind of non-negotiable. Yeah, and that might be different times, but.
Yes, and sometimes most of the time it works out, but sometimes it doesn't, right? Like, sometimes I can get distracted, and I'm just not willing to beat myself up if I decided to go down a rabbit hole for an hour on a Sunday when I should have been all in on the family. That's just gonna happen. Right. This is about not beating yourself up and knowing where your intent and your efforts are, and also knowing life's a long game. So, in 2-3 years, when I'm taking my kids on business trips and traveling with them and showing them the world, that's where the benefits have come from some of the sacrifices. And I don't know, I think everybody, if they had the option of, would you rather have had your parents around every minute from 1 to 5, but not be able to do all these amazing experiences with them from 11 to 18? Versus the alternative? I just have a funny feeling all of us would raise our hand and say, I'll take that 11 to 18 shit. And I plan on dominating that, and some of the sacrifices I have to create between 1 to 8 is something I'm willing to do, and that's my strategy, and I don't give a fuck if some parenting blogger says that I'm not spending enough time with them. Fuck you. I love people so much at such a weird level. The fact that it's kind of weird, I'm thinking it through. At the airport, pre-Garyvee, I would just roll up on people and just start talking to them. I'm weird like that, in the best way. I wouldn't weird people out. I would find, I'm good, I have good intuition. I could see where I could get into a combo. Post-Garyvee, it all comes to me, so that's good, in a way, right? But, I don't like when people treat me different because they know that there's something going on with me, because I'm uncomfortable with it and I don't need it. I don't need a free appetizer. I don't need to cut a line. The good thing is I can make people happy. I really do think, I do think the lack of judgment on oneself is a huge proxy.
Yeah, it's gone.
I really believe in that one. I think it's what makes all my shit work, all of it. I just don't beat myself up when this day, this week, this hour, this month, this year was bad by Monday morning quarterbacking if I did a good job.
Strategies for helping kids nowadays find what they're passionate about, because like education's there, it's still free, the information's free, whatever they want to learn they can access it, so I don't care.
Exposure.
Yeah, so
it's all exposure. It's exposure. And doing things with him, right? Like being like, let's go to this ping pong tournament together. Let's watch these YouTube, what I'm doing with Xander is like, let's watch these YouTube videos about other things besides sports because he's pot committed. Just like trying different shit.
Is that what happened for you? Like,
for me, it was, no. This is why I'm scared shit. I said it today. I'm scared shitless to be a proxy for people. I was on some different shit. I was like, this is why I use athletes and you know, performers a lot. Like, I was locked the fuck in at like 7. And with no dad telling me, with no mom telling me, with no TV telling me, with no culture team. Like, I was like truly like purebred animal, right? Like, why does a leopard know what to do? Why does like a fly, like, it was just that, which is why I was bad in school. By the time my natural abilities in math and reading, whatever, like, by the time we got to 4th grade, where I couldn't just coast by on like, math came easy to me, basic math, right? It was over. Because I was already too late. I was already 3 years into this journey of like, so then it was like, we need you to, I was like, you can't get the finger out of my ear. I was done. By the time I was 10, it was long, like, I'm gonna be a businessman.
You were locked into that.
I'm gonna be a businessman. The word entrepreneur didn't exist. I want to spend every second selling stuff is actually what I used to say. It wasn't businessman yet. I want to spend every second of my life selling something. Lemonade, shoveling snow, and then when sports cards came a year later, it was fucking game over. Now it was a scalable item. It was like fucking, any hope of anything was gone. and then 3 years later, I'm in the liquor store, stocking shelves, selling wine. At 14, you know? And again, the stories I tell, that's why it's fun to have my friends from college. I had a couple of my friends from college, the thing, like, people understand, like, when I'm like, I worked every weekend and every summer vacation, I know people don't fully believe me. But Brandon Warnicki knows, like, it was actually every minute. You know what I mean? It was actually. Dustin and I just walking in here right now. We just kind of had a funny moment because yesterday was a long day of meetings. You have to understand, like, I have 87 meetings today. All right, if that's true, if I add anything to my repertoire, I should probably like really love the fucking shit out of it, or it's the best use of my time as a good, it's like the best business on earth, best margins, yeah. Well, that will always happen. Yeah. But I think these things are always like a decade or 15 years when you're like a serious person. And so, you know, look, I mean, honestly, like hearing that data set from you, like, it's pretty cool. Like, you know, I think you just kind of keep rolling. The only reason everybody follows me blindly is because of the 6 times that nobody agreed with me and I was right.
That's really annoying. So this is time track record.
Prior to that.
I'm stealing the Supreme Court thing. I love that so much.
The Supreme Court thing really works for me because we have such a big company now and people are equals in certain scenarios and they waste so much time and I have such a good culture. It's actually the reverse. At first, the concept was made so that politics wouldn't fuck up the place. Like you two are equals on a decision and you start fucking out politicking each other. We got the culture so fucking right now, you'll never believe why it's important now. Speed. They both know that they can't fuck each other up because I'm sitting over here watching and you can't do that here. So they dance for 5 months and don't do shit because they still don't agree. So now I need the Supreme Court to get shit done, not to save from politics. It's wild. I built the Supreme Court to not create political warfare. Now I'm using it for speed. Because they're both trying to be out empathetic to each other, but then they're sitting and crippled and doing nothing. I'm like, it was like funny how good the Supreme Court thing has been for 2 things. The first one was clear to me. The second one evolved after we really got our culture super right.
Yeah, but the funny thing with you is like, you listen to like everything you've done long enough, at some point you're gonna realize like, just do what he says to do.
Well,
That was with me and Lucas. I don't know what you did before that. And I'm like, he's wrong. I'm not gonna do it. You said do this thing. I'm like, screw it.
Luca rookie cards.
Yeah.
You bought them too late.
I bought them at like.
When I first started yelling, you know, when I first started posting, they were $35.
Were they?
They were 30.
I caught
Thank you, Dust. They were 35. Dust doesn't react often. He must remember. They were 35
But I got
bucks.
Top Shot because of you.
Nice.
Yeah, that was the thing with Lucas. And you texted, someone said, if I have like $1,000, what should I buy? And you said, buy 4 Lucas.
Yeah.
And I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna buy 8. And I'm like, that's where this whole thing came from, because at that point they were on the way up, and I'm like, okay, fine. I won, here's some money.
It's really, really fun because I'm petrified. I studied sports cards for 8, that was probably, of all the calls, the scariest one, because even when I'm so scared to be wrong that I won't say anything unless it already happened. That's the part that I most enjoy. I haven't predicted shit. I'm just so fast at observing things, and now I have the platform. If I'm loud, at scale, and fast, it feels like it, but it isn't it. And so, sports cards though, I sat on an extra 6 months on some real, am I forcing this because I loved it? Yeah. Like, everything was there, but I'm like, no, this is my subconscious bias. I'm fucking with myself because I want cards to be back, and like, you know, because I loved them once when I was a kid, and so, exactly, and so I was very, very concerned that was gonna be the one, but then at some point I'm like, this is just too obvious. Here's the fun part about me. I don't consume without purpose. My escapism is the Jets. Other than that, when I'm on it for an hour, I'm watching why. And I'm also breaking the algorithm. Like, I'll search random shit. Like, out of nowhere tomorrow, I'll just search pickles and consume 3 pickle videos. I'm trying to break the algorithm to give me serendipity, not give me what I am looking at. I don't need Jets videos in there. I need to like do what consumers are doing. So like literally out of nowhere, I'll just type in sweaters, hashtag, click, and then my For You page will evolve because I'm throwing it off. Because I'm using it for market research. I'm not a social media consumer, I'm a social media anthropologist and strategist, and then I'm a content creator. So I wasn't getting sucked into TikTok from a consumer standpoint, I was using it for insights and was understanding it was sucking everyone in.
Not being Garyvee,
Yeah.
how can I sort of inspire people around me to work on their excuses?
You know, it's funny, long before I was Garyvee, this is what I was doing for my high school friends who were doing stupid things like drugs and alcohol or driving drunk because they wanted to act cool in front of somebody. This is just about self-esteem. It's so simple, it's almost overly emotional for me. This is about self-esteem. The way I choose to do it, and you know this is how I do it, is I go directly at it. If every one of us can think of somebody we care about right now that's just not doing it right, and all you have to do is sit them down and tell them they're not doing it right, but we don't want to do that because we'd rather not short-term hurt their feelings and let them fail long-term, which is remarkably crazy if you give a fuck about somebody. So what can you do as not Garyvee? Have the actual conversation and tell your sister, your mom, your uncle, your aunt, your child, your best friend, the next time they come up with an excuse, that it's a fucking excuse. The reason I say the thing that if there's anybody that ever looked like you that made it, then there's no excuse, is because I believe it. You know, it's really hard, you're in an argument and your friend tells you, that's great, Gary, but both my parents were alcoholics. And that really fucked me up. Right now you're on the defense. That's a good first punch by them. I'm like, cool, we don't need to use me. If anybody has ever been successful that had 2 alcoholic parents, which by the way, I know of 3, well then, now what's your excuse, Karen? We are just so interested in blaming everybody else and excuses because we don't want to take on responsibility. And somewhere a long time ago, I went completely, do you know I think everything is my fault? Like, all of it? Like, I think it's weirdly cloudy outside right now and not nice out, my fault. Like, his scar, my fault. Like, I fucking just default into my fault. And everybody tries to do everything else the other way. And let me tell you how good life becomes when you take on responsibility. It gets real good. Some of you, and there's a lot of you that follow me, you know why I keep bringing up the last scene of 8 Mile, the Eminem movie? How many people have seen that movie? Great. The last scene, they go into the battle. He makes fun of himself the whole time because it leaves the other person with nothing. The leverage is in being accountable of everything. The leverage is exposing your weaknesses. I proudly talk about passing on Uber twice, being a DNF student. You know, I proudly talk about my shortcomings, right? I can't wait for more bad things to happen. I mean it, because I will talk about them because what, you're so fucking perfect? Fuck you, right? So how do you do it? You have the conversation and you realize that you're doing a disservice to the people you love the most by holding your mouth shut because you're not willing to deal with the short-term conflict.
Hello, Gary.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. You?
Great.
I have a question about passive income, and
Okay.
I want to know what kind of trends do you see for a person interested in that? I don't want to be stuck in an office 9 to 5 for the rest of my...
Well, passive income comes in 2 forms. 97% of the form is the douchiest, shittiest thing on earth, and 3% is the tried and true thing that has actually created passive income in the history of mankind. So let's find out which side you're on. How are you thinking about, when you say passive income, do you mean what do you mean?
I mean not having to work all day long. I want to be on a beach in Mexico instead of being on an office in Sweden in cold November.
Are you being serious right now?
Yes, I'm serious.
The quickest way to not be on a beach in Mexico is to think that passive income exists. It's a bad mindset. I really believe that. I think the reason so many scumbuckets are making so much money is because you're buying stupid fucking courses over and over, thinking there's some fucking magic formula for passive income. Passive income looks like this. You take money that you can afford to go to zero, and you put them into 2 places that have historically created passive income. Public markets, that you don't care if it goes up and down and you just wait to the end, or real estate, and you hope that your real estate area doesn't get crushed. Everything else almost doesn't exist.
I'm thinking more of real estate because I've been involved in it in Sweden.
Love it.
And for all the Danish people, it's pretty like the government is very restricting on creating a real estate business. It's a lot of taxes. It's really hard if you don't have the money in the beginning.
So shouldn't you work your face off to get money, not buy dumb shit like a watch and then put it into the real estate?
Yes, I should.
Okay. Look, you know, and I think you know, and I'm happy I could see your energy. I'm so passionate about this issue. There are people that are ripping people off at the level of hundreds of millions of dollars because they're selling this dream because they made a video with pretty girls in a beach in the background and are making people spend $1,000, $2,000. It's breaking my heart. Passive income doesn't exist, and anything that starts with I don't want to work is already a problem. What you need to do is, I understand I don't want to work in an office or something I'm not passionate about. The best way to make money is to make less money than you're making now, enough to still live, because you gotta live, around something that does interest you because you wake up 8 years later and something good is actually happening. So it's not everybody wants to make it the extreme of, I'm sitting in my job, I hate it, this sucks, all the way to beach in Mexico. But there's a real in between, which is why I wrote Crush It, which is at night, when you're done with your shit job that is paying for the life that you have to live right now, you don't take some of that money and buy dumb shit like 17 beers watching the World Cup. What you do instead is you work on something on the internet that costs you nothing to start, save all those dollars, build something for yourself over 7 years, and then transition from the shit job to your own business. That's passive.
What personal skill, and not a business skill, do you believe to be the most crucial for anyone to develop in order to catapult one's business to the next level?
Empathy. I can't let it go. I can't let it go. I need you to have it. I don't know how to develop it. Don't go buy bullshit courses that teach it. You know, before you do it, be thoughtful. But if you have empathy, you have everything. It's just so big. It's so big. It makes you incredible at sales. I'm a great all-time salesman because I'm empathetic. I basically can't even live my life without, I watch my mother, and she has it too, but we have different, obviously we're different. She's the centerpiece of every single person that knows her. Her empathy for everybody becomes the leverage of everybody needing her. And she took it in a way, and I got the benefit of watching it, that I think allowed me to find a little bit of a better lines in the sand where to stop and start. And I'm different in a lot of ways, businessy and competitive, and we're different. But when you have empathy, you have everything. And I just, you know, there's a lot of things I care about, right? Gratitude, it surely makes you positive if you have perspective on that. But if I had to pick one in the way you're asking, it's empathy, man. If you just, like, all of you care about you, not your customers, not your employees, not your vendors. And I get it, you have to take care of your family. I get it, but it's the way. If you care about them more and figure out what's left for you and what to do with it, you will have for the rest of your life. And I'm sure it's very biblical and very faith-driven and very altruistic. It doesn't make it any less true. Empathy.
You talk about your own children almost having a sort of a chip on their shoulder coming now with you in the, you know.
Yeah, because the level of disrespect I have for them is extraordinary. Yeah. No, really. I mean, like, you know, when, you know, that's a natural reaction to people that are handed a lot of stuff. It can go one of two ways.
Yes. So my children are very privileged.
Yep.
How do I give them or bring them the perspective, the gratitude? They're 8, 10, and 12. Oh, sorry, 8, 12, and 14.
This is the great challenge for so many of us. So first of all, there's something that I've watched. This is something I've been passionate about long before I had them. Now it really fucking matters. And it will matter. You heard me earlier say, forget about what I'm doing. How they come out is going to be my legacy, so I care. First of all, for everybody in here, you need to wrap yourself around something most parents don't want to wrap their head around, which is you can't fake environment. The amount of rich friends I have who send their kid for 4 days to Africa to build a school and think now they're grounded is fucking ludicrous. You can't fake environment. If you are privileged, you are privileged. If you are not, you are not. The great gift and curse for all of us is we had too much or we had too little. Then your DNA and parenting and environment take over on which path you decide. What I'm doing is there's a couple things that are my religious 10 commandments, and I'm sticking to those, and everything else I'm unemotional about. So number 1, kindness. Kindness is non-debatable. If Xander and Misha ever deploy meanness on somebody else, especially based on how much money mommy and daddy made, I will physically punch them in the face. That's number 1. Kindness is not debatable. Number 2, they have to really love what they're into. I have no interest in my kids being an entrepreneur. I have no interest in my kids being a showman. I want them to be what the thing they love the most is. Number 3, there's no such thing as 4th place trophies. All these privileged kids are being protected from hurt feelings by parents today, which is why they're gonna suck. Because in real life, you come in 4th place and 8th place. So in my Upper East Side of Manhattan culture, there's a lot of 8th place trophies and everybody's fucking great at everything. I tell little kids that are 6, you suck. Their parents get mad at me, but I'm like, Ricky sucks at golf. So no make-believe. And then number 4, almost everything else does not matter. Number 5, update the list as soon as I feel like I have to, in real time, as soon as I see something that makes me have to update the list.
And we had to make just a short, 10-minute film.
Yep.
And so I made it, and all hell broke loose. I was super passionate, super, on top of shit, and everything just was like, the editing was bad. I didn't really like the camera angles we got. Everybody's time schedules was just so constrained to the point where we weren't even able to finish. We had to cut out probably like 80% of the story. You know what I mean? And
It didn't go well.
Didn't pan out.
Yep, that's good.
Yep.
Dude, that's good. Stay with me here. That's good. Adversity is always the foundation of success. You needed that punch in the face because you probably came in too hot and thought you were fucking Steven Spielberg and this was going to be fucking amazing. Like, you probably came in too hot. You probably came in too audacious, too entitled, too confident, overconfident, had an ideology in your head. You might have even, at this young of an age, not done right as a leader and might have not known how to lead the people to success. You might have taken the framework of they're working for you instead of you're working for them, because you've had this dream, this ambition. This has been manifesting in your head. So there's almost like this entitled subconscious that comes into that those people there, the editors, the filmer, right, that they're there for you, right. Where in reality, for real success, you're there for them.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, I'm excited. I'm grateful that this was such a fuck up because you're so young. And I think it led to a self-reflecting moment. You've already shared that out to the world on your Instagram. Here you and I are now. I'm proud of you. You need to view that as what you deserved. You weren't good. That's why it sucked. That's on you. But that's great because then you get to look at what you weren't good at.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And, I've worked with this nonprofit chapter. I opened it on campus and everything. And so I had this leading ability, which allowed me. And look, I've been pretty vocal about this. I fucked up probably way more than a lot of people do. And just realizing that I'm young and realizing that I'm only 22 years old. And,
you're supposed to fuck up.
Yeah.
Like nobody came out nobody comes out the gate. I had the great fortune that I made my fucked up mistakes when I was a kid, right? I think back to this story where I had $1,000 very early in my baseball card career, and I begged my mom to take me to Price Club, which was the precursor to Costco, and we got there, and the boxes I wanted to buy weren't there. But instead of being disciplined and not having the money burn a hole in my pocket and just keep it and be patient, this is me at 13, I went on a spree and bought a ton of bad cards. Spent almost all the money on these bad cards, bad football cards, bad baseball cards. Took them home, opened it up, got that high, loved it. It was almost the lottery. But then I had nothing. I had nothing of value. And I had to grind all of 8th grade, making good trades, selling shit to get back to even that point where I had that money. And that taught me a great lesson. I had the luxury of learning a lot of my business lessons. We don't talk about business kid prodigies, but if that was a thing, I would have been one of those. I learned a lot of things at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So now I'm 44, but I'm 100 because I've been in my game for fucking 37 years, which most people don't get into their game until their mid-20s, and then they're retiring. I'm in my prime. I'm in the dawn of my prime. My prime's probably in my 60s. So I think this is great that you fucking had this huge L, because I think it is starting to instill more humility into you, which is going to be a balance that you're going to need to be a great movie maker.
Yeah. So how do you think I should have that accountability moving forward? Because I totally realize that, and especially after talking to you, it's just now I'm writing, this feature film that I'm doing, and pretty much really starting to get the ball rolling again. So how do I have the accountability and shit like
First and foremost, you have to realize that it was 100% your fault that failed, and that you don't want that to happen again. You know, like you don't want that to happen. So I think, one, that should help you. Two, you should also be okay when this one gets fucked up, because maybe you were at 10 audacity, and maybe as you sit here with me, you're still at 7. And you may need another punch in the fucking neck to go to 4. Like, you know, like, it's still a process. But what the number one thing I can tell you, brother, is if you're a leader, you work for them, they don't work for you. It's a huge factor. And I see it a ton in creatives getting fucked up and getting confused.
Right.
It's a huge factor. You work for them. So you have to tell a great story, but to see that story come into real life, you're going to need to be the number 2 to your editor, number 2 to the intern getting coffee for the actors. You're always playing the humble card. And I always believe that works out in the end. I genuinely do. And so you have to be accountable and humble going into this, knowing that was your vulnerability the first time around.
My question is, I know, you're very big on, producing at least sort of 8 to 15 pieces of content a day. And so I'm a music artist and also a club promoter. And this is something that I'm really struggling with. I'm really not too sure how to hit that number. I'm only doing sort of 4.
Well, the number, Scott, the number is theoretical. I wish you could put out 100 pieces of content a day. You know, and by the way, the more platforms you're on, the easier it is to put out content. And when you're on Twitter, where that content may be 5 or 6 thoughts that you just write out in written form and not a fucking YouTube vlog, all of a sudden, that number becomes more obtainable. The numbers are arbitrary. I've thrown out 8, 15, 4 a day, 30, 100, 64. Those are just numbers that are kind of theoretical. Right. What I'm trying to do is get people to get into a comfort zone of understanding the more you're able to actually create and produce, the more likely something will happen. Something happens when you put something out. You know, I always think this all the time. The amount of music artists that were meant or could have been one-hit wonders or had a real career, but they cut one song out of their album when they put out their first ever album. Yeah. And that was the song that was destined to be a top hit. And then it never happened. Well, that sucks. But with the internet, that doesn't need to happen. Everything should be put out.
Right. And I know you always talk about context as well. Is that where that comes into play as well?
Correct, because the way to win on platforms is understanding how TikTok works differently than LinkedIn, that works differently than Twitter. So the context of the platform a lot of times is going to be the variable of success. It's why I always say, watch what I do, not what I say. Why am I trying so many different formats on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter? Why am I doing that? I'm not doing that for my health. It's because I'm trying different things, doing different things, and those things lead to observations. My latest content pillar on Instagram is these sketched, kind of pictures of me with quotes, and they're outperforming the ones that look like tweets. If I didn't think to do that, which came from an insight that I got from a wine text ad that me and Dwayne on my team created. So if you're not constantly in motion and trying, you're not gonna find the thing that's gonna be your breakthrough if you keep doing the same shit. People hit me up all the time. They're like, Gary, I put out 1,000 pieces of content. Like you said, it's not working. And then I go look at their Instagram and it's all the same kind of content. I'm like, the market told you a long time ago that they don't like that.
Yeah. Okay, I see. And what kind of what platforms would you recommend the most?
All of them. But for an artist, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, Twitter, they're all in play.
I see. And is it kind of because I know you did your daily V, and that was literally just a whole day of you. Is it kind of that just sort of splits up into different parts across multiple platforms?
I mean, that worked for me because after 7 years of doing content myself, I was able to afford hiring somebody. And then once you hire somebody to film everything you're doing, and you're a kind of person like me that's busy every fucking minute for 15 hours a day, that led to a lot of content. That's not the reality for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But, filming you promoting a club or doing a show from coast to coast, that's kind of interesting shit. So maybe, and by the way, I hired somebody and paid them, but a lot of people would do that for free because they just want to be close to that action. You know, when you're in music or you're in club promoting, like that's fun life. And there's a lot of people with a camera that are willing to fucking do it for free because they could never get that close to that coolness. And so there's just a lot of ways to attack it.
I see. Okay, well, thank you so much, Gary. That's really helped
You're
a lot.
welcome, mate. Listen, don't overthink. Make.
Okay. Got it.
You being that logical, you're going to outthink yourself. And in
Yeah,
that
I see
thinking
that a lot.
was the time to make. Reverse it. Realize you'll have better thoughts if you learn from what's working and not working. I think a lot. I just make and then consume and then think. I don't have the audacity or ego to think I'm going to figure it out myself before I put it out. I put it out and then learn from the reaction. That's how I think. That's the reverse. And I think you need to consider that.
Right, so you're listening more.
You're listening. And what that takes is humility.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Thank you so much, Gary. Thank you so much.
You have to have the self-confidence to not get the likes. The bottom line, though, is, and it's so obvious to me, brother, this is a game of patience and putting in the work. Like, you know, when you're an aspiring, you know, filmmaker, you dream every day. It's in your soul for you to have your breakout film. You watch the fucking Oscars and you see highlight and you're like, that's gonna be me. You see a breakthrough, you know what I mean? Like, I get it, but like the reality is it takes a lot of grinding time. A lot.
Yeah, I mean, the only luxury we have is time, right?
Yeah, and then other people will be like, time is fleeting and you never know, and I get all that, but like the reality is, whether you think we have a ton of time or no time, whichever one you believe in, I can promise you this, the fucking hard work is the cost of entry. You either have such extreme God-given talent that the first thing you write pops off on some Matt Damon, you know, and Ben Affleck shit, right? Or you're like the 99% and you put in the fucking 2 decades and then your moment comes. Take it from a 44-year-old who's twice your age. If I told you right now, you have to put in 22 years of grinding, but at 44 you hit, you would fucking rip your arm off for that opportunity. Yet when you're 22, that sounds like the worst.
Yeah, it does. It sounds so far away, but that's what it takes, right?
It definitely is normally a foundational piece of the required way to get there. But here's my thing. Being a filmmaker that is commercially successful enough to live your life is such a lottery ticket, it should be hard. I keep reminding all my friends and youngsters and this community, it's like, wait a minute, so let me get this straight. You want to be a millionaire? You know, less than a 1% of 1% kind of life? Shouldn't that be hard? Shouldn't that take a long time? Shouldn't it be really difficult? You know?
Right.
You know, like shouldn't that require enormous amounts of time? Shouldn't that like be a process? Like, I'm always trying to get people to understand what they're actually asking for. Are you out of your mind? There's only so many filmmakers in the world. You want to live that life? Cool. But of course it should be fucking bleeding out of your eyeballs. Of course there should be unlimited roadblocks. Of course this should be hard.
How would a creator balance ambition while also not overjudging themselves?
I think it's just having a real conversation with yourself, you know, just really just going there. You know, like even the way you asked that question, obviously you've been listening enough of like either my themes or other themes, or you got there yourself. Like the reality is that, you know, ambition and patience seem to be opposites, but when blended together really lead to a higher level of happiness. And so I couldn't push harder for people to figure out how to get there. I think a lot of times when, you know, people think they might be complacent or not pushing hard enough when they just need a rest, you know, and that's okay too. And so I actually, you know, I find it easier now after, you know, I think it came natural to me after years of practice, but I think the fact that that's even on your radar is already a winning formula.
Gotcha.
You know, the fact that you're even debating that already puts you in a good spot.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy the process. So I love the hustle. I love working from the time I wake up till the time I go to bed. I enjoy it. Yeah, just trying to figure out that balance mentally, not even so much in what I'm doing, but more just, up here in the head.
I get it.
But yeah, and then any advice for starting a business with a family member? Because I know you've done stuff with AJ and your dad.
I mean, on that one, you just got to make sure that you value the person more than the money and the clout or respect. It's a really challenging game, family businesses. But the reality is if you could just love somebody more than you love the money or the clout or the credit, then you'll be in a good spot. For me, it was more credit. It was more like, hey, Dad, hey, AJ, I'm a better businessman than you. And that creates friction. For them, I think they value the dollars a little bit more. I don't judge that. I just think they do more than me. So that worked out a little bit in the fact that that's how that broke down with us. But I think you've got to figure out if the person that you're going into business with has the same ambitions as you do. Is it money? Is it the credit of who did it? I think communication is just everything in life and definitely in family businesses. Well, have you considered the fact that you may not want to be doing those things?
A little bit, but to get through college, you have to complete certain things.
I understand, but I don't think you're going to get better at it. I don't think you like it.
Yeah.
Everybody procrastinates shit they don't like, and everybody does things that they love.
True.
I've got a million things I'm supposed to be doing. I'm procrastinating them because I don't like them, but I'm up to 2 o'clock in the morning last night looking up sports cards on eBay because I like it.
But then, I mean, how would you find something that, energizes you? Because right now I'm just 19, so I know I have a long way ahead, but
which is amazing. For me, I tend to like to ask people to really slow everything down and try to figure out really audit the last 19 years of your life and try to figure out what you like.
Yeah. And I had another question for you. I have this interest in digital media.
Okay, go ahead.
I have this interest in, digital media, and that's why I'm doing a media course right now in college. So I want to know, how can you find a skill or a job that, you can enhance throughout your college life so that when you are out there in the job field, you are able to learn more rather than going from, the bottom of the pyramid, learning that skill from the bottom.
Skills are a commodity and actually not so valuable. I think what you should focus on is interacting with people.
All right.
I think if you're spending time in college, what I would challenge yourself to do is to meet as many people as possible and really get much better on your people skills and empathy and compassion and listening and friendships, because college is not going to teach you the skills of real life.
Yeah, true.
I know it's true. Listen, many have to go through college and get a degree to go into the field that they like, but you don't learn about, no matter how much somebody trains for war, once the war starts, it's different. No matter how many videos you watch on YouTube about playing basketball, when you get on the court and somebody elbows you in the chest, you're now playing basketball. You understand, school is not built for what you're asking for. What you could do though on the flip side is use this time to really start to learn people, because, teaching can be done in a lot of different ways, and consuming information and gathering information is great. But the reality is you can do that outside of the school system, outside of university. Life is so much about actually doing. Of course, you can learn certain skills, doctors, lawyers, the law. You have to memorize those things. You have to learn those things. But doing. If you're talking about business and digital
practice
marketing,
makes it better.
Yeah, I mean, reading about running Instagram ads is different than running them, right? Reading, thinking about how to make a podcast versus actually making a podcast. I just
getting into that activity and learning more through the process.
I get worried that people think like I hate college or this and that. I hate debt. You know, I hate that people think it's a ticket to a skill or happiness.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of great things about college. People mature. It's a time, you know, it's an age group, you know, 18 to 22, 17 to 23. You're a very different person. But like this thought that you're going to take a course on project management or on, you know, advertising. I mean, you know this, what they're teaching in college for advertising is antiquated.
Yeah.
You have to do.
There's one thing that you said about being online in 2020, that if you're a business that's not online, then you're basically dead in the water. And I just thought, I've got to help my mum. I've really got to, you know, push her on that side, because that's not her strength. And to be honest, it's not massively mine either, but I can learn and I can help her, especially now I've got, well, a bit of time. I've actually got 2 children under 2. But so my question is, we want to expand the company. We have about 24 properties at the moment. We want to get more properties, but how can we do that when everyone is after the same thing, and we don't really know where they are? You know, there's hundreds here, but we don't know who they are and where, you know, who they belong to.
When you say there's 100 here, sorry, little guy, like Lucas, when you say when they're after the same thing, I just want to make sure I fully understood you.
I mean, when every other property management company is after the same client, they all want, you know.
You got to be better.
Yeah, but how? How do we promote ourselves? Because the way I was thinking is Facebook ads, but
that is one.
We need to employ people to do that for us, because I've had a go before lockdown, and it amounted to nothing. But I mean, I know I haven't put any effort into it, really.
Well, good news. Anything you don't put any effort into always amounts to nothing.
Well, yeah, I know. I mean, it's a lot to learn, isn't it?
It is. That's why it's good, and that's why it works. You know what else takes a lot of effort? Push-ups. And if you do it every day, you'll get muscles.
Yeah, well, I mean, what I was thinking with the Facebook ads is, because it's not particularly my forte either, maybe it's better to pay somebody else to do that for us.
The only problem is if you don't know how to judge it, then you might waste money that way too. And I kind of like the idea of you learning. You're so young, you learning that skill is something that.
I'm not that young.
Kelly, you're that young.
I'm a little bit younger than you. I'm 40.
Kelly, you're young as shit. I mean, you're not fucking Lucas young, but 40, like you're gonna minimally live another 40 years. Like, you're young, and learning this skill right now is very important. It was there in Mount Ida College in Newton, Mass in 1995 when Pete from Maine, and we had nicknames for everybody, Pete from Maine said, "Come and check this out." And I heard coo for the first time. Dial-up. And I said, "The fuck is this?" And he's like, "This is the World Wide Web." And I was like, "I heard about that shit." And this is how, for the kids that are listening, this is how crazy the internet was in 94, 95. I waited my turn to get on the computer to go on AOL. It was so crazy, this thing, like being on the internet and seeing people in chat rooms, that I watched it as a spectator while my man was on the keyboard. And I finally, like an hour later, sat down and clicked a couple buttons and found myself on a baseball card bulletin board in AOL. And about 7 minutes into my internet life, which was this, I said, "This is gonna change my life." Straight up, just like that, like straight out of a fucking movie. And that started the conversation in my head, which led to 6 months later saying to my dad, "Dad, we need a website for the liquor store." We didn't have a computer. My dad didn't take credit cards. Like, he was old school. Yeah, I was born in the Soviet Union. He's like cash only, doesn't trust people, like wouldn't take checks, doesn't believe in anybody, like, you know, like all that stuff. Like, and I got him there. I just completely knew the same. You know, it's funny. The one skill I really have is my intuition about things and people is heavy. Like, it's just really my biggest thing. So like literally looking at the internet or looking at the investments I made, Facebook, Twitter, Coinbase or the fact that I bought Bitcoin in 2014 is no different than me thinking that Gunna or DaBaby were going to be good, or that I thought Alvin Kamara was going to be a good player when we started Vayner Sports, even though he was the backup running back at Tennessee. There's something in me that understands people and understands what people are going to do. And that's been my whole life. Like if I was an A&R guy, I would dominate. If I was a scientist, like looking at spiders for 20 years in the woods, I would figure it out. Like that's my thing. And so that's what happened with the internet. That's how it started. And my mission in my 20s, came to this country with nothing. I was born in Russia, lived in a studio in Queens with like 8 family members. Like I grew up rugged. Like my mom was frugal and didn't have money. So I was like, if I wanted Nintendo, if I wanted stuff, I had to buy it as a kid. So I'd always fight for money and business. And my number one goal was to help my parents' liquor store business. Like I gave up my 20s, all of my 20s, man. When kids talk to me about like, I'm like, I gave up all my 20s to build a business for my parents. I left with 0 ownership of that business. And I blew that business up from 3 to 60 million. And sometimes people try to rag on me like, you got handed shit. I'm like, you think that's what happened. Let me tell you the truth. I took a business from 3 to 60 million. Never got paid shit because in the family business, you put it all back into business. So it's one thing if you make money for somebody else in a corporation, but at least you get paid $1 million a year. I was getting paid 50, 60, 70,000 a year, building a big ass business. And at 34 years old, left and had to start my company in somebody else's conference room, VaynerMedia, in Buddy Media's conference room, because I didn't have the money to pay rent. When you're the CEO, when you're the founder, the conversation that's not being had, everybody sees all the nice things that come along, but every single thing that happens in this company that's wrong is my fault. Every snarky comment on social, every kind of like sad face, every email bullet points that every Friday I get bullet points from tons of VaynerMedia employees, and 80% of them have a bullet that's like, Rick is stretched too thin and is crying in the bathroom. It's devastating. It's very tough to be at the top of something, even when it's going great. Vayner's going great. This is not even like, Wall Street collapsed and we lost a lot of clients and we have to have layoffs. Like, this is like, we're rolling and we're the best and we're crushing, and there's always things to worry about because that there's no, it's India's fault. Everybody here at some level, all the way up, can still say, it's Gary's fault. I can't. And when you say it's my fault, there's a really tough burden emotionally, forget about financially, that comes along with that. And so I think it can get very lonely. You do recognize, it's amazing to me, for as much of a communicator and extrovert as I am, how much I keep in my own mind, how much is going on in this noggin every day, calculating, strategizing, thinking, and there is no vacations. I desperately love national holidays, and like I can't wait for Christmas and Thanksgiving because everybody else is checked out, and that's the only time that I'm able to be off. I have my 40th birthday coming on Saturday. I'm going away with my family. This is an incredible moment in my life, and I will not be able to be 100% checked out because in those, in that Friday and that Monday, the world is moving. This world is moving. My responsibilities are moving, and I'm always one phone call away from a fire that I have to address. It is a very intense, lonely place to be at the tippy top. And so when you think about, I always think about like, is life fair, right? There's always things that happen. There's things that we can't control. But the notion of like, somebody getting compensated a lot of money for things that do I think somebody making $20 million a year to be an athlete or an actress? We never talk about actresses and actors, right? We love to zing on athletes, but like actors make, like the big ones make like $15 million to make a movie. But still, at the end of the day, it's because they command the market, people want to pay attention, and there's an enormous amount of pressure. As I've lived my life and started spending some time with A-list celebrities, their life is, it's intense. Like, I really secretly think that I could be an A-list celebrity. That I literally could go on TV and be a breakout hit, like in a Mad Money kind of like, not like Jennifer Lawrence, I just don't have the looks, but in a Mad Money kind of like Regis, kind of like Andy Cohen way. But man, real celebrity status is intense. You just have nowhere to go. And so there's that, or an athlete where like the physical shape that you have to, 10 hours a day of putting in that time. People look at the outcomes, they don't think about what's coming along with it, and the pressure. The pressure to know that if I get hit wrong, that my entire life collapses, especially an athlete, that's a short window. Or the pressures that we've said. Look, I don't think it's a coincidence that some of the greatest artists of all time pass away in their mid-20s because of the intensity. It's intense. It's intense. It's very lonely, and so it can be extremely lonely. Ironically, and you'll find this wild, I want random extra people in the room. I love being around people more than anything, but I'm also very comfortable in my own being one-on-one with myself. So I'm good, but I know that I'm emotionally stable as fuck, and it's intense for me. I can't imagine people that are not as fortunate as I am, pulling from both directions, ambition, but humility, do you know how content I am? Like, a lot of people watch this show and you hear I want to buy the Jets, and you misunderstand really where I'm at. Like, I want it all and I want to win the whole thing, but if I never win again, if I plateau at this level, there's an amazing amount of content in my body for all my hunger, and that balances me. But I couldn't imagine if that was tweaked just a little bit, if I really felt the pressure, because there's enough pressure from a day in and day out standpoint. It's intense. It's intense. I think people say it. I think much like stereotypes or statements, there's always so many truths to it. I think the reason so many people say the road is lonely, because to really be successful in the context of business especially, you've got to make 7,000 to 7,000 decisions that are critical, and you can only make them with yourself. And it's an intense moment on a daily basis.
So this is pre-social media. So what strategies are you using to build a company from 3 to 60, right? Because internet is just becoming a thing.
Yep. Back then it was email and Google AdWords that really took me off, right? And banner ads. People used to click banner ads, kids. Yeah. I would buy a banner ad for $500 a month on a website like a winespectator.com, and people clicked that shit. Back then everyone was curious about everything. Like, banners were like, oh, cool. It was kind of like cool. You're like, oh shit, takes me somewhere else. Like, again, I'm talking like it's 100 years ago. It's only 25 years ago, but it's like it's a lifetime ago.
Yes,
there was no cell phones. It was crazy. There was no laptops. You had to sit at a fucking desk to be on the internet.
This feels like a scene in the Wreck-It Ralph movie where he's just pressing.
But so banner ads being, a little early social called forums. Remember bulletin boards and messenger boards? Yeah. So I was part of those, all the wine boards. They're like, why do you know so much? Oh, I own, or my family owns, or my dad and I run this place called Wine Library. Check it out, winelibrary.com. 2 clicks, 5 clicks, like real like bricklaying, And then I figured out email in '97. I was like, okay, this is gonna be big. And so I just started asking every customer that came into the liquor store, you got an email? And this, again, back to the old days, 25 years ago, people were like, yeah, I got an email. It's AOL@yahoo.com. email. But it was crazy. Luckily, the store was in Jersey, where a lot of people worked in Wall Street, and the Wall Street cats had email pretty early. And so, started getting that Wall Street clientele. And that really started changing our business. But catalogs, I did catalogs, direct mail, newspaper, full page ads in the New York Times and Wall Street Journal and Star Ledger in Jersey. Big shout out when I was, when I made a couple bucks and was able to put them on. It was all family immigrant businesses are. You don't take money out to buy shit. You put it back into business, back into business, back into business. So one of the reasons I never really amassed a lot of money during that time was my dad wasn't paying me or him any real money. Every dollar was back into advertising, back into more employees, back. And so we were feeding. One of the reasons I tell a lot of entrepreneurs now, like, feed your business. Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur to take it out and buy a fucking Rolly, and buy a Bent, and buy like some. And I'm like, no. Don't flex yet. You just started. Put it back in. Your watch will be more expensive. Your trip will be nicer. Your flying accommodations will be better, but you got to feed your business for a minute.